The thing about our brains is that it's constantly looking for evidence to confirm or deny, like the things that we think about life. And so let's take an example about money. Let's pretend that you're trying to get better with money. And your brain is trying to update its story that, like, we don't suck with money. And all you have is this history of evidence where your brain has already paid attention to reasons why you do suck with money. When you start to have a new habit or like take a new approach, especially in your finances, your brain's going to default to like, see, we suck at this. And there's two reasons for that. One, because we have something in our brain called the anterior cingulate cortex, which is essentially the part of the brain that is in charge of holding this like mental model of reality. And the second part of the brain that I want to mention here is the default mode network. And then there's like many other parts of the brain that are involved here, but there's like a couple pieces I want to mention. That mental model of reality, if the brain has decided like this is what we think is reality, it's going to constantly check against what our lived experience is, and it will detect if there's a mismatch, which gets us to take action. But then you have your default mode network. And, actually, no. I want to talk about the reticular activation system, not the default mode network. That's important too, but actually it's called the reticular activation system. And what the reticular activation system does is it helps filter information that's seen as like useful or relevant to send up to the brain and the salience network and other parts of our brain that decide what deserves our attention. The reticular activation system filters information, and then we have our salience network that decides if it's worth paying attention to. And what the reticular activation system does is basically filters for information that confirms our beliefs. So if we believe I suck with money, your brain is more likely to filter for information that confirms that belief. That in psychology, it's called cognitive bias. In neuroscience, that's the part of the brain that's involved in it. And so when we are building the habit of something new, we have to actively take the time to pay attention to things that support the new claim that we're trying to make. But the point of this video was that we don't realize how much repetition and how much evidence we actually need in order for our brains to start switching into this new belief system. This is what I thought of this morning. This was what like the thought that made me want to make this video, is that we seriously underestimate how much evidence it takes. And right now, what made me think of this is like the engagement and like the views on my page are dipping, and it's probably because I'm fucking exhausted and I have so much going on, and like making TikTok videos is like pretty low on the list. And of course my brain is like, I suck at this. This will never work. This will never become a business. People don't care anymore. See, it was just like a one-hit wonder. All this evidence. But that's what made me take a step back and said, Jessica, how many days has this been happening for? 2. Where's the Zoom? 2. Okay. How many days has the TikTok page been doing well compared to how many days you've had the TikTok page? A lot. Okay, many days. I've had this TikTok page for 5 months, and it's grown to 63,000 followers it's at right now. So this is why I always talk about knowing the difference between objective and subjective reality, because your brain loves to tell you stories that aren't fucking true, and you need hard, cold facts and evidence to dispute those things. And what I ended up taking away from that little like inner monologue is that, Jessica, you just don't have enough repetitions and that like says, hey, this is stable and this is successful and this is something that can weather bad days. Like 5 months is a very short period of time. And so whatever habit that you're trying to change, and it depends on how big the goal is. If the goal is like just to start budgeting and becoming financially literate, give yourself like 60 days. 60 days of pure evidence of just like starting a new habit of like, hey, am I bad with money? Yes or no? Look at the last 60 days. It might be true that you are bad with money, but you gotta objectively quantify it. What does bad with money mean? Does that mean I spend more than I make? What's the math involved in this? Because once you can get numbers and objective evidence, it moves blood to the front of your brain, your prefrontal cortex, away from the amygdala, the emotional fear center of the brain. It starts getting your brain to work in your favor. But whatever you're working on right now, just know that if you're trying to create change, you probably just need more evidence that you're good at it before your brain will actually believe it.